I will make you some questions, and if anyone wants to know something about, they can participate too. So, first of all, I've heard that the introduction of the title of Images of Relief, that the word relief, it's not really the accurate traduction from Danish. Is that right?
No, I mean it's about the event that is presented here, also with authentic footage, is from May 5th and 6th, 1945, when the Germans surrendered in Denmark, and then the Danish resistance movement took over. Okay. And that's what we call the liberation. The pictures of liberation. And for some reason it was translated when the film was made and had some going at festivals. It was called Images of a Relief, and I mean relief is when you have a headache and you take a pill, you get a relief, right? And I talked to Trier, I remember once, why this idiotic translation? Who made that? He said, I did. So evidently he wanted it that way.
Well, in Portuguese we stood by the English version, and it's a leap too. I would like to know, in your opinion, if there is some kind of connection between images and the e-triology that we call element of crime, epidemic, and Europe. Do you think this is the first step to these three?
Oh yes, certainly. What happened when Trier came to the film school was that he very soon found two other guys at the school. One is Tom Elling, who was a cinematographer much older than Lars, and then he found a guy who was an editor called Thomas Gislason, Icelandic background, and together they somehow developed a new look. I mean, this was 1979, 1980, 81, and they looked around and they saw films. I mean, here you see the last scene, the influence from a scene in Bertolucci's Il Conformista, as you mentioned in your program note, and also Tarkovsky. Trier had seen some of The Mirror, Tarkovsky's strange film from the mid-70s, and he wanted to do the same thing. And I think he also took elements from Fassbinder and put it all together to create this very sort of special style. And the result was this film looked like nothing else in Danish cinema at that time. And of course it didn't look like...
How was received by because it was in the... I have this information that it was on the theatrical distribution.
Yes, it had it was not exactly an action film, no? I mean, it all began with the first film we saw, Nocturne, this about the woman, also of course a symbolic way of describing death. I mean, she's standing there at 6 o'clock in the morning at the top of a parking space and somehow expecting the plane to be there. I mean, totally unrealistic. It's symbolic. And he made this small film, and it was sent to a film school festival competition in Munich. I think that it was maybe the first or the second year they had that, and it won a prize. And suddenly the school thought, okay, Trier is our great hope. And when he came back, he could do whatever he wanted to do. And the interesting thing was that when they then had to make their graduation film, and Images of a Relief is Trier's graduation film, the film showing what he could do, there was a rule saying that the graduation films can be maximum 30 minutes. And as you notice, this film is 55 minutes. And I think there was established a ground rule in Danish cinema, which means whatever rules there are, Trier can break them. Why? Because he's Trier. And because the other students said, well, our films are, yes, but this is Trier. Okay, so, And it has been like that ever
Is there
since.
this kind of obsession by Germany, because Germany is very present in the three first films and in this one too?
I mean, a special perspective is that this is a film where we have a kind of sympathetic German soldier. I mean, he has contributed to doing some bad thing with his boy, evidently, and he's punished for that. But I mean, in the end, we see him going to heaven. Yeah. I mean, that's a traffic normally reserved for another person, not for a Nazi soldier. But the interesting thing was that Trier's mother was in the resistance movement during the war. And the father had a Jewish background, so both of them escaped to Sweden during the later part of the occupation, and that's where they met. Later we found out that Trier's father wasn't actually his father, but so Trier, he imagined that he was Jewish, but he wasn't. He was not Jewish, he was not a Trier. Yeah. So well, that was a surprise for him. When he was around 33.
Is he proud of these films, these two films?
Maybe he feels that somehow they express something that he really was very so engaged in at that time. But I don't think he would want to see it again. That's another thing. I don't think, and most of us, I mean, once is enough, right? We know what Trier had in mind, and I remember there was some funny thing about the ending there with the going to heaven, because the guy who plays the role, he was not really an actor, he was a director. And not really a good director, but he was a nice and interesting person. And he said, "Oh, but anything with going in heights, I can't do that. It's totally out of question." I said, "No, it's nothing. It's just a couple of meters." And then they took him up 30 meters, and he was totally so at the edge of fainting. The problem was that they had checked this location at a later time in the day, and they somehow had were misinformed about where east is. The idea was that the sun should go up and hit him. The rising sun should hit his head. But now we see it's behind him. So they could just go on the other way. No, because there were buildings at the when they looked that way. So yeah, that's some beginner's problems.
I've heard that you've called Lars, is that true?
Yes, when we had our reception, I thought I better call him and tell all the things I'm doing for him on it. And Lars said he was very sad that he couldn't be here, because he hates flying, and he's afraid of flying, and he's afraid of many things, and he was very sorry that he couldn't be here. And I said, you would also be sorry that he wasn't here. The only one who's not sorry is me. I'm always happy because Trier is staying at home and I'm going instead of him.
You've come too.
So, but he sent his warm greetings to you, and well, he told me an interesting thing, that he had a call from there's a Hollywood magazine called Hollywood Reporter, so an important Hollywood periodical, and they asked him, what do you think of 50 Shades of Grey? the big question is sort of the man who made Nymphomaniac should somehow be a specialist on 50 Shades of Grey. And Lars said, oh, I haven't seen it, I haven't read the book, but I think I have heard about it. And then the man said, well, but why don't you make a review of the film for Hollywood Reporter? And he said, well, why not? I think that's the second time Trier is going to review a film. I remember some 30 years ago, he actually wrote a short review of a film in a magazine.
As your student, did you wrote reviews too?
No, he never did. He never wrote anything. He never did anything, except he made some student films that are even more terrible than these films are. And those films he doesn't want anyone to see. But you can find them on the internet.
And we'll see some clips of it in your masterclass.
Yeah, I'll show us. There's especially one scene that he said, no, where he's in drag, you know, he's in women's clothes. But I'm not showing that scene because I know that he would never forgive me. He would forgive many things, but not that. So you will have to find it for yourself. The film is called The Orchid Gardener.
I'll try to find it.
You'll see what I mean if you look carefully enough.
Recently, the critics about the latest films of Lars are not that positive a little bit around the world, here in Portugal too. Do you feel the same in Denmark?
No,
the critics are not receiving very well the latest works. Well, I have this feeling a little bit around.
No, actually, I think of course films like especially Antichrist and Nymphomaniac are somehow so provocating and so unpleasant films. I mean, they're meant to be unpleasant. That there must be quite a lot of critics and other people who would say, no. But I think generally, I mean, in Denmark we have a tradition for being rather distant to people who think they're very clever. I mean, if you're a Dane and you think you're very clever, don't get too much ahead with that idea, because you are nothing. The strange thing is that the latest film, Nymphomaniac, in the long version, you know, there's a short version of only 4 hours, and then there's a long version of 5.5 hours, and that was very well received in Denmark. I mean,
you won now a prize there.
Yeah, actually it won some 8 prizes recently for best film, best director, best, you name it.
It doesn't give a chance to anybody.
No, exactly. Somehow, it's unfair that he's there. So I think everybody feels that he is somehow.
And I would like to know in the audience if someone wants to pose any question. That would be nice. About the films. Alguém quer dizer alguma coisa? Ou nem por isso?
The last film we saw now has a lot to do with Europe, the other movie.
Let me give you a hand.
Thank you, Lavinia.
This last movie we saw has a lot to do with Europe, the other movie from Trier. And I think this problematic of the ending of the war in Germany and the starting of a new society, do you think he wants to show us that Europe is based upon this ruin of Germany, as he showed in Europe? A new Europe is somehow beginning, but the old Europe, the Nazi Europe, is still there. And do you think, why is he so concerned about this period of destruction in Germany and reconstruction? Why does he historically love that period so much?
Yeah, I think you're right in interpreting it as also, as we said, a kind of predecessor for the E trilogy, and the film called Europa, also taking place in Germany in 45, is in many ways an extra development of the same ideas. Well, I think partly because his parents somehow represented the generation that was involved in the war and the resistance movement, and somehow I think the element of a provocateur is very, very developed in Trier. That he wants to do the opposite of what is supposedly the correct thing to do. That's one thing. I mean, he wants to somehow offend his parents, and I think he. But the other thing was that he was very fascinated by Nietzsche, by Nazi, all the Nazi stuff. And I remember in his early days when he prepared his first feature film, The Element of Crime, also taking place in Germany, kind of Germany, though not in the Nazi era, that he said Nazism is the greatest gift for artists. And compared with his later remarks on Hitler, remarks that I think were misunderstood generally, I mean, he's just talking about a fascination of decay and decadence and destruction, and somehow, well, that's so important for him that he can't let it go. I think now maybe, I don't think you will see so much Nazi stuff in Nymphomania, but we see lots of other things, of course, yeah. So, yeah, that's it's an obsession with him, I would say.
Yeah. It's an inspiration for him.
Yeah, you could say that.
Is there anyone who wants to make another question? Here, Olivia, please, if you don't mind.
Hello, good evening. Since you know the growing of Lars' ideas so well from the beginning, what can you tell us about the motivations that drove Lars, and not only Lars, but here, especially him, to create a movement like Dogma 95?
Okay, yeah. Dogma 95, do you all know about Dogma 95? Yeah, it came out, well, in 95, celebrating the 100 years of cinema. It was basically his idea to do such a system of restrictions. I think from the beginning, he had this idea that you should put up rules for your filmmaking. Here you could see, for example, the very, very long take at the end. That is typical of such a thing where you say, okay, we keep this shot on Kirsten's face for about 6 minutes, which feels like forever. I mean, this kind of attitude to filmmaking, where, for example, in his first feature, The Element of Crime, he had made as a kind of rule there, I mean, a rule we shouldn't notice, but it's for him, it was important to have a rule saying, don't do any cross-cutting. Cross-cutting is the most common way to cut in a film. When you have, for example, two characters talking to each other, you would have us, you and me together, and then you would have close-up of you, and you have close-up of me, and close-up. I mean, this, boom, boom, boom. He would say, this is forbidden. Why? Well, because it's the most common thing to do, I won't do it. And then he would do things like starting with one person there and taking a tilt all the way up over the roof and down, boom, to the other side. Here's the other person. I mean, things like that. That's a man obsessed with rules and self-invented obstructions. And you know, later he was co-making a film with an older colleague called The 5 Obstructions, if you have heard about that. A kind of a post-dogma film. So I think the whole idea was that he liked to put up these limits, and he believed in obstructions creating creativity. And I think the immediate background for Dogma was that in the mid-90s, during 1994 actually, he was invited by Denmark's radio, our television, national television, to make a thriller, a horror story. And it became this serial called The Kingdom. Maybe you heard about The Kingdom. And he wrote that together with his then script partner, and the people at the radio said, "Oh, this is a great story. This would be fantastic, but and we are going to do this. But it's too long. It's far too long. We'll have to condense and well, shorten it, and then it'll be okay." And then I mean, normal directors would say, "Oh, great, they're taking my serial, and of course I have to adapt to the conditions." But Lars would say, "Why is it that we need so much time to do these things? Couldn't we somehow do it in a more less time-consuming way?" And he said, "What is it that takes so much time when you shoot a film?" Well, it is, among other things, to put up the right lights. If you make a scene, you would say, "Oh, okay, no, we had a little more, then could you try?" And then they'll go around each other for an hour and a half, and then they'll make maybe three minutes of film, and that would be super. But he said, why don't we let it be ugly and wrong colors and so technically imperfect, and then we can shoot it. We can shoot everything. So, and I mean, other directors who had presented that idea for the Danish television would, I'm sure, would not be allowed to do that. Trier, he could always do anything he wanted to do. So that was his experience, that, and out of that came a very refreshing and original idea, and where he made ugly visuals in that series. And another thing he tried was to somehow do wrong things in grammar. You know, there's something in filmmaking called the 180 degree, or the acting line. You know what I refer to when you have two persons like us sitting here. You can sit there and take a picture of us. You can sit there, but you can't go on the back of us, because then you suddenly the one who's at the left will be at the right, and vice versa, and that would be confusing. And I mean, that's a ground rule in the way you tell stories in film. If you have a car driving, you will have to stay on that side. You can't go on the other side, because then the car will be driving in that, and you say, oh, they are returning. No, I just went over the other side of the street. You can't do that. And Lars did all these things in the kingdom because it's forbidden. He did it. And I think out of that came the idea, why don't I somehow institutionalize these in a group of rules, and then and that's an interesting thing, because he's so egocentric. I mean, he's himself so much, but at the same time, and I think that comes from his communist mother, the idea that he's very individual, but he wants the other guys to join his little community, and that's the idea of Dogma, to get the other guys with him. And he found this young, promising director, Thomas Vinterberg, who hadn't made a first feature yet, and asked him to be his partner in phrasing these Dogma rules. Someone said to Vinterberg, look out, he's doing this to pacify, to destroy you, but I don't think he did that. But actually, Dogma did destroy Vinterberg. He had this enormous success with the Celebration, the second feature, and it took him 12 years to get back on his feet again. And yeah, that's another story.
Well, we'll have much more of this Saturday around 6:30. So Peter will give this masterclass in the museum. And just to close, I want to know if anyone wants to say anything more. Is there any question? Okay, so Saturday Peter will be in the museum, and there's much more where this came from.